There's still, again, that bitter debate here in America on whether the war on terror is a criminal issue or a military matter. And just to increase the level of drama, we are on the verge of another military confrontation with another prominent member of the Organization of Islamic Conference, Iran. The idea that Islam is peace, tolerant, and compatible with Western political theory and values, I think, is seen to be useful more as a strategy and not as a pursuit of the truth. And what is that strategy? It goes as follows. Given the fact that there are over 1 billion Muslims in the world, 1.5 billion, given the fact that the world is globalizing at a very fast pace, given the fact that America has an interest in those places and that America is a moral empire, meaning we do not wipe out our enemies in the same way that the Athenians wiped out Carthage or that Muhammad wiped out his enemies, we should practice self-restraint, and with our restraint, we should use our political skills, we should use diplomacy, tools of persuasion, and other resources until we're able to get around this conflict. The hope is we will be able to pacify Islam if we do not anger Muslims. And there is nothing that angers Muslim elites more than the criticism of Islam, because you're taking away their objective, you're challenging the object. Unlike Christians and Jews, Muslims do not appreciate question marks on the moral perfection of the Quran and Muhammad. So in communicating with that large party of Muslims, we are told, we will create the image or go along with the image that Islam is perfect. And if we communicate that to them, if we don't blame their religion, we will be able to persuade the masses to take our point of view. We shall give them financial aid, and we shall address the day-to-day problems. It's not a war on terror anymore, it's a chronic problem. That is the policy of enticement that has been in place since 9/11. That policy of enticement has failed. The question now is, are we ready to acknowledge that failure? And are we ready to explore alternatives? Thank you very much.
Quite a few questions here, so let's get started. First, why did you select the topic of Islam and religion for your speech today?
Why did I what? Sorry.
Select the topic of Islam and religion for your speech today.
I selected the topic of Islam and religion as my topic today because I'm frustrated by the continuous belief, and I think self-delusion, that Islam is only a religion. Islam is more than a religion. It is a religion. It does have a spiritual dimension, prayer, fasting, again, the rituals of life and death. None of us is opposed to that, and that part of Islam fits very well with the American Constitution and can be protected by the FAST, and is protected by the FAST Amendment. But there is another dimension to Islam. There is the political dimension. And I wanted to talk about that, to highlight that. I also want, and the political dimension has been the gist of my speech. And often in my other work, when I speak to audiences both here and in Europe, I talk about the social dimension. And that social dimension regulates or governs the relationship between men and women and the family. And in that, I find a great subjection of women to very old, outdated, and human rights violating ideas.
Global public opinion polling has shown President Obama's policies and his Cairo speech haven't improved the view of the United States among the world's Muslims. Why do you think that is?
I know that the questions were written, before the speech. But I think that my speech completely answered this question, because the objectives of the agents of Islam on the state level, on the militia level, and on the non-governmental level is not to give up Islamic jurisprudence. It's not to westernize. It's probably to modernize and use modern means to make Islam dominant. If that is your goal, then why would you suddenly say, okay, we are Muslims, we all gather in Cairo, and we are going to take another look at the national interest of the United States, but only this time, because it's communicated by a black man whose middle name is Hussein, we're going to change our minds about that. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to any intelligent person. The thing that we need to be doing, and I think that the President Obama and his administration should have done, was examine closely what now are the objectives of these countries, what are the objectives of, what are the Muslim masses told to believe in. And that is, I think, why his popularity hasn't increased any more than that of President Bush.
In your book, Infidel, you state that you quote, first encountered the full strength of Islam as a young child in Saudi Arabia, unquote. Could you please elaborate on this?
Well, in Somalia, first of all, I think I was too little. I was about 8 years old and wasn't clever enough to engage in philosophical questions regarding which kind of Islam and so on. In Saudi Arabia, before we went to Saudi Arabia, Somalia was under secular rule. We were ruled by a dictator who was inspired by the Soviet Union. In our daily lives, we did see what that meant, but pertaining the state laws pertaining to women at the time didn't exist. Women and men theoretically were treated the same. The different clans in Somalia and the different tribes had another idea on that. I was treated very differently from my brother, but it wasn't state imposed. When we went to Saudi Arabia, what I saw and what I experienced was Sharia law, or the state prescribing how exactly I should dress or my mother should dress, whether we can get out of the house or not, with or without a guardian, what our testimony means, what our inheritance. There was a gender apartheid that was imposed by the state and that was given to us as Sharia law. And that's very different from that was very different from being in Somalia. It was different from being in Ethiopia. It was very different from being anywhere except where Sharia law is actually practiced and enforced.
There have been several questions wanting your views on the firing of Juan Williams for his comments, and well, they want to know what you think about the recent firing and also about his comments.
The firing of
Juan Williams.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
NPR. Yes, he must be a very famous person because I only heard about him after he was fired. And it immediately reminded me of Europe and the things that are going on in Europe, where the lobbying and the intimidation tactics of both the two categories, the Muslim Brotherhood network plus the states, to criminalize any criticism of Islam. But it's not just legal criminalization, it's also to stigmatize socially, to say that he's a social ill, somebody who says there must be something wrong with him. That has been very successful in Europe, and almost all critics have been silenced, I think, in my country, except Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. And I came here and got an open podium to carry on and say whatever I want and write whatever I want. And Juan Williams has met with the success of that policy within NPR. So what it demonstrates to me is that the National Public Radio here in the United States has successfully accepted the premise that if you criticize Islam, you are yeah, you are racist or Islamophobic, or you are social, or you're causing social upheaval, you're generating intolerance toward Muslims. And so from that logic, the thing for them to do was to fire him. And I think it's great because it has exposed that that seed is there. And I've read a few in the Wall Street Journal, for instance, people calling to privatize that radio, which I think is better for it. But
So no more government money for them.
if government instruments are used to silence reporting.
Okay.
Reporters.
And we don't want the government silencing reporters, particularly here. That would not be very nice. What advice can you give the West regarding the successful integrations of Muslims in our society? The questioner says, I agree with you that this is of the utmost importance. Do you have any suggestions as to what each of us can do as individuals?
That is a fantastic question, because it comes to the heart of that non-governmental Muslim Brotherhood network. And one of the reasons why they want to silence you when you criticize Islam and call us Islamophobics, etc., is because they want to have complete ownership, complete monopoly on Muslim immigrants who first came to the United States not to spread Islam, not to settle or infiltrate, but to lead normal, peaceful lives. And for them to incorporate all those diverse ethnic groups, they need to get to those communities first and convince them of the caliphate agenda, of the Sharia agenda. What we can do is to open up competition and say, in a country like the United States, you are free to peddle your political theory and your political philosophy for society, but we are also free to do the same. And we are going to go to those same communities and we are going to educate them on other competing political philosophies. And that entails not only a defense of saying America is good, I think that part, a bit of it has been, look at me, we Americans, we like you, la 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 la, but it's also a challenge of the principles of Islam. And that challenge on the principles of Islam, that is what the Islamists do not want to do. That is what the network of Muslim Brotherhood do not want to do, because every rational human being, if you assume that Muslim individuals are rational too, once they are provided with those alternatives, there is a possibility that they may reject Islam and adopt the Constitution of Liberty. So what you can do is start that competition. And you can start it from any philosophy, as a Christian, as a humanist, as a feminist. Let's get going.
As one of the most prominent and respected non-theists in the world, you can imagine the surprise and disappointment of many in the secular community when you advocated for the conversion of Muslims into Christianity, Muslims to Christianity. Why advocate for religious dogma over reason and secularism? How might we get you to change your position?
I'm not advocating religious dogma. I'm not advocating religious dogma over reason and secularism. What I'm admitting is that religions are different. I have observed and read about and experienced Christians and Jews and even Hindus and Buddhists who have evolved from absolutism to tolerance, to compassion, to peace. I've also observed, unfortunately, that most people don't really want to be atheists. I would like them to be atheists. I wish I had a magic wand. I could make everybody a reasonable secular atheist, but I can't. Most people who read Infidel, who are Muslim, who write to me, have not converted to atheism, even though they've gained a full insight, not from my book, but on their own experiences. They relate to me and